When we speak about the origins of ancestral belief in Africa, we must begin at the very dawn of humanity itself. Africa was not only the cradle of human life, but also the birthplace of the first spiritual questions that early humans ever asked. Long before the rise of kingdoms, before the existence of writing, before agriculture or metal tools, the earliest humans looked at the world around them with curiosity, fear, and wonder. They watched storms tear across the sky, they witnessed animals die and new ones be born, and they saw their own loved ones grow old, weaken, and fade into stillness. In this ancient world, nothing was random. Everything held meaning. And from this meaning, the first spiritual ideas emerged. Archaeologists today can trace the roots of these beliefs back tens of thousands of years. In what is now southern Africa, graves dating back around 70,000 years contain bodies carefully placed in sleeping positions, surrounded by red ochre and small symbolic objects. These burials are some of the earliest evidence that humans believed death was not the end. Rather than discarding the body, they honored it. They prepared it. They sent it off as if it were beginning a journey to another place. This was the seed of the belief that the dead continue to exist, that they move into a world beyond the physical one, and that they may still hold influence over the living. For early humans, death was mysterious, but it was not a disappearance. Their loved ones remained in their memories, in their dreams, and in the echoes of their presence. When a hunter passed away, the tribe still heard his voice in the night wind or felt his protection during dangerous hunts. When a mother died, the family still sensed her watching over the children. Dreams played a powerful role in this early understanding. People saw the dead in their sleep, walking, speaking, warning, comforting. To them, dreams were not internal illusions, they were direct experiences with the world of spirits. If someone who had died appeared in a dream, it meant that their spirit was alive, active, and capable of communication. The living world and the invisible world existed side by side, separated only by a thin veil. Every shadow, every whisper, every unexplained event felt connected to forces beyond ordinary sight. Early Africans believed that the spirit of a deceased person did not vanish but transformed. It became more powerful, wiser, and able to move between realms. And this belief was grounded not in abstract theology, but in the simple, emotional reality of human experience, the love for family, the respect for elders, and the need to make sense of loss. As small communities grew into clans and tribes, the dead were no longer just remembered, they were honored. The earliest form of ancestor veneration began as simple acts of respect. A stone placed at the spot where someone important was buried. A piece of food left near the resting place of a loved one. A whispered message at dusk when the family gathered around the fire. These actions carried a single message: we remember you. We still need you. Stay with us. Over time, these practices shaped a worldview in which the dead became guardians. They protected the family from danger, they blessed the harvest, they carried messages to higher spiritual beings. And they could punish wrongdoing to maintain harmony within the group. In this sense, ancestral belief arose not from superstition, but from social necessity. In a harsh world where survival depended on unity, the idea that ancestors were watching encouraged cooperation, obedience, and respect for tradition. The birth of ancestral worship in Africa was therefore not a sudden invention. It was a natural evolution of thought born from human emotion, human experience, and the desire to understand life and death. The earliest Africans saw the world as an unbroken chain, the living, the dead, and those yet to be born, all connected in one ancient, sacred circle. And from this circle, the foundation of African traditional religion quietly began to form, thousands of years before the first civilizations left their written records. As human groups in ancient Africa grew from small bands of hunters into extended families and stable clans, the belief in ancestors deepened and took on new layers of meaning. Life in early African societies revolved around kinship. A person belonged not just to themselves, but to a lineage, a chain of parents, grandparents, great-grandparents, and countless generations reaching into the distant past. In these communities, the living were only one part of a much larger family that stretched backward into history. Respect for elders, therefore, was not simply a cultural value. It was the foundation of social order. Elders carried wisdom, resolved disputes, preserved traditions, and served as living memory. When such an elder passed away, their role did not end. The belief that they continued guiding the family became not only comforting, but essential. This transition from respecting living elders to honoring deceased ones was natural and powerful. People saw no reason why someone who held great authority in life would suddenly lose their influence in death. If anything, death elevated them. Freed from the limitations of the physical world, an ancestor could observe more, know more, and act more effectively. Their spirit was believed to remain close to their descendants, watching every decision, every conflict, every celebration. Because of this, ancestors became moral overseers. They rewarded the family when harmony was preserved, and they brought misfortune when members violated sacred rules or disrespected the lineage. Illness, drought, conflict, or unexpected accidents were often interpreted as signs that an ancestor was displeased, pushing the living to correct their behavior and restore balance. The idea of ancestral authority also emerged from the close relationship between people and land. For many African societies, land was sacred not because it could be owned, but because it was inherited. It held the graves of the elders, the memories of past generations, and the spiritual energy of the family line. To be separated from the land was to be separated from one's ancestors. This connection made the ancestors more than spirits. They were guardians of territory, protectors of the home, and custodians of community identity. When families gathered to plant crops or celebrate rites of passage, they invoked the ancestors not as distant deities but as intimate members of the household, still present, still listening. As clans expanded, marriage alliances formed, and villages grew, the role of ancestors expanded with them. Each lineage had its founding figure, often someone remembered for bravery, leadership, or extraordinary wisdom. Over generations, these founders became powerful ancestral spirits, shaping the identity of entire communities. Their names were passed down, their stories told by firelight, and their actions became moral lessons for the young. Through these stories, the community learned who they were, where they came from, and what values they were expected to uphold. In this way, ancestors were the first teachers, shaping the spiritual and ethical foundation of society long before formal religions emerged. The presence of ancestors in everyday life was not symbolic, it was deeply practical. People asked ancestors for advice before important decisions, invoked them during conflicts, and sought their protection during hunts, wars, or travels. A family that maintained strong relationship with its ancestors was believed to prosper, while one that neglected them risked chaos and misfortune. Ancestors became the invisible glue that held families and clans together. They encouraged unity, discouraged betrayal, and ensured the continuity of traditions that kept society stable for thousands of years. Thus, as kinship grew more complex and communities became more organized, ancestral belief transformed from simple remembrance into a full spiritual system. The dead were no longer just honored, they became authorities, guardians, intermediaries, and the spiritual backbone of the clan. In this ancient world, every child born carried the hopes of the ancestors, every elder carried their wisdom, and every family carried their legacy. Through this unbroken chain of kinship, the belief in ancestors became one of the strongest and most enduring foundations of African traditional religion. As African societies grew more complex, so too did their understanding of the invisible world that surrounded them. To the ancient African mind, the universe was not divided into separate, disconnected realms. The physical, the spiritual, the living, the dead, and even the unborn existed along a single continuous line. Life was not a straight path with a beginning and an end, it was a circle, endlessly turning. Within this circle, ancestors occupied a central and powerful place. They formed the bridge between the earthly world and the vast spiritual realm that lay beyond it. To speak of ancestors was to speak of a universe animated by unseen forces, where everything was alive with meaning. One of the most important ideas shaping this worldview was the concept of vital force, the life energy that flowed through every human, animal, plant, and spirit. This force did not disappear when a person died. It simply changed form. When someone passed on, their vital force rejoined the family line, strengthening the generations that followed. Death was not a loss but a transformation, a movement from the visible world into the world of spirits. Because ancestors were bound by blood to the living, their spiritual energy remained deeply connected to the family, influencing events, guiding decisions, and maintaining the delicate balance between order and chaos. In this spiritual logic, ancestors were not distant gods but personal guardians. They understood the living better than any other divine being could, because they had lived the same struggles, farming in dry seasons, protecting children, settling disputes, navigating love and conflict. Their wisdom made them the perfect intermediaries between humans and the Supreme Being, the Creator who was believed to be too vast and too sacred to approach directly. If someone wished to speak to the divine, they first spoke to the ancestors, who carried the message forward. In this way, ancestral spirits were like the pillars of a great spiritual structure that connected heaven and earth. The presence of ancestors was experienced in countless subtle ways. A sudden breeze on a clear day, the movement of leaves with no wind, the cry of a bird at dawn, these were not random occurrences. They were signs, coded messages from the spiritual world. Illness or bad fortune could mean an ancestor was trying to warn the family. Unexpected success could be a blessing sent from a pleased spirit. The world was full of clues, and people learned to read them with care and respect. But dreams remained the most powerful doorway into the unseen world. When someone entered sleep, their spirit was believed to wander, and in this wandering, it could meet the spirits of the dead. A dream in which an ancestor spoke, gestured, or even remained silent carried meaning. It could predict danger, offer guidance, or settle unresolved family matters. These encounters were so impactful that entire decisions, when to plant crops, when to travel, whom to marry, were sometimes shaped by messages received in dreams. Through this spiritual logic, everyday life became deeply intertwined with the ancestral world. Every action carried moral weight, for ancestors were always watching. People believed that wrongdoing did not simply break social rules, it disrupted the harmony of the universe itself. And when that harmony was broken, ancestors intervened to restore balance, sometimes gently, sometimes forcefully. This belief system encouraged ethical behavior, respect for tradition, and accountability within the community. No one was truly alone, every person lived under the guidance and judgment of countless generations. What made this worldview so resilient was its coherence. It explained life's mysteries without requiring scriptures or rigid dogma. The invisible world was not an abstraction, it was part of the rhythm of daily life. The ancestors were as real as the earth under one's feet and the sky above one's head. They were woven into the laughter of children, the wisdom of elders, the rituals of farmers, and the stories told under the night sky. In this spiritual universe, the question was never whether the ancestors existed, but how best to honor them and stay in harmony with the forces they represented. Across thousands of years, this elegant and interconnected view of the world shaped African spirituality in ways that endure even today. It offered a profound explanation of life, death, and the unseen energies that flow through all things. And at the heart of it all were the ancestors, ever present, ever watchful, binding the living to the vast and mysterious universe that surrounds them. As ancestral belief became a central pillar of African spiritual life, communities developed rituals to maintain the bond between the living and the dead. These rituals were not mere ceremonies. They were the pulse of cultural memory, the channels through which generations communicated across time. In a world without written scriptures or formal priesthoods, ritual became the language of the sacred. Through offerings, songs, drumming, and shared gatherings, the ancient Africans found ways to keep their ancestors present, alive, and active in daily life. These practices shaped not only spirituality but the very structure of society itself. The earliest ancestor rituals were simple yet powerful. Families poured libations, small offerings of water, milk, or alcohol, onto the earth, while softly calling the names of their ancestors. Fire played a central role, for it symbolized life, purity, and the path between the earthly realm and the spiritual world. At night, families gathered around the flames, telling stories of those who had passed, ensuring that no name was forgotten. Food was left at sacred spots, and special portions of meals were set aside for the unseen guests. These acts of remembrance were expressions of gratitude, loyalty, and love, but they were also believed to nourish the spirits, giving them strength to protect the family in return. As societies grew more structured, specific individuals, elders, healers, diviners, became the custodians of these ritual traditions. The elders were the guardians of memory. They remembered the lineage, the history of the clan, and the lessons taught by generations long gone. They led the ceremonies, instructed the youth, and ensured that the rituals were performed correctly. Healers played another role, acting as mediators between the spiritual and physical worlds. They treated illness not only as a biological problem but as a sign that harmony with ancestors might have been disrupted. Diviners, often highly respected figures, entered altered states of consciousness to seek answers from the spirit world. Through trance, dreams, bones, shells, or symbolic tools, they interpreted the messages of ancestors and guided the community in times of crisis. What united all these roles was oral tradition, the living memory of the people. In Africa, knowledge flowed from mouth to ear, from elder to child, from performer to audience. Stories, proverbs, chants, and ritual songs carried the wisdom of centuries. Some tales taught moral lessons. Some recounted the origins of the clan. Others explained the laws of the unseen world. These oral traditions were not static, they changed as communities evolved, absorbing new experiences while preserving the essence of ancestral belief. Without written texts, spirituality remained flexible, adapting to the shifting landscapes of history, migration, and cultural exchange. Music and dance were equally vital. Drums, especially, held sacred power. Their deep rhythmic beats were believed to call the spirits, to open the gateway between worlds, to summon ancestors into the circle of the living. During ceremonies, dancers entered trances, their movements guided not by their own will but by the energy of the spirits who spoke through their bodies. In these moments, the boundary between life and death blurred. An ancestor could speak through the trembling voice of a dancer or guide the community through cryptic gestures and signs. Such possessions were not feared, they were welcomed, for they offered direct communication with the world beyond. These rituals, passed from generation to generation, allowed ancestral belief to survive even the greatest upheavals. Colonization, forced migrations, wars, and the arrival of new religions challenged traditional practices, yet the ancestral connection remained. In many cases, families maintained rituals in secret. In others, they blended ancestral rites with new religious teachings, preserving the core of their spiritual identity while adapting to new realities. Modern life changed the tools and the timing of rituals, but not the heart of them. Even today, many African families begin important events with libations, continue to honor ancestors in naming ceremonies, and seek guidance through dreams and divination. Through thousands of years, rituals became the threads that stitched together past and present. They carried the voices of the dead into the minds of the living. They preserved cultural identity in times of prosperity and in times of danger. And most importantly, they ensured that no generation ever stood alone. Each ritual was a reminder that behind every living person stood an unbroken line of ancestors, watching, guiding, and protecting. It was through these rituals, repeated endlessly across the centuries, that ancestral belief endured, unshaken, and continued to define the spiritual landscape of Africa. Even as the world changes at a pace unimaginable to the ancient ancestors, the emotional bond between the living and the dead remains one of the deepest threads running through African life. In many communities, modern cities, new religions, and digital technologies have transformed daily routines, yet the presence of ancestors continues to shape identity, guide decisions, and provide emotional grounding. This enduring connection survives because it touches something universal and timeless, the longing to belong, the need for protection, and the desire to understand one's place within the vast story of humanity. For many Africans today, the ancestors are more than spiritual beings, they are the foundation of family identity. To know where you come from is to understand who you are. Names passed from generation to generation keep memories alive. Family stories told during gatherings remind children that their existence is not random but part of a larger narrative shaped by courage, resilience, and sacrifice. When people speak about their forebears, they are not recounting distant history. They speak as if those who lived long ago still walk beside them, still whisper advice in moments of confusion, still shield them from unseen dangers. Emotionally, the ancestors offer comfort in a world that can feel overwhelming. When someone faces hardship, illness, financial struggle, heartbreak, they turn inward and upward, calling upon the spirits of their lineage for strength. This connection offers a sense of continuity, a reminder that countless generations survived challenges and endured, and that their strength flows into the present. In this way, ancestral belief becomes a source of psychological resilience, allowing individuals to feel supported by forces greater than themselves. It is easier to face life's storms when one believes an entire lineage stands behind them. In many communities, ancestors also serve as moral anchors. Even when social structures shift or modern life creates new ethical dilemmas, the idea that one's ancestors are watching encourages responsibility, humility, and compassion. Wrongdoing is not just a personal failing, it is a stain on the lineage. Likewise, acts of generosity, courage, or loyalty honor those who came before. Through this moral framework, ancestors continue to influence how people behave, how conflicts are resolved, and how communities maintain harmony. The connection to ancestors is also tied to land, a connection that remains deeply emotional despite modern migration. A family's land is more than soil, It holds the graves of loved ones, the stories of triumphs and tragedies, the echoes of rituals performed for centuries. When people return to ancestral land, they often speak of a feeling that defies explanation, a sense of being embraced by the past, of stepping into a sacred space where the living and the dead coexist. Even those who leave their homeland carry this connection in their hearts. Memories, stories, songs, and rituals travel with them, allowing the ancestors to remain present no matter how far the journey. In the modern world, ancestral belief has adapted in remarkable ways. Some blend traditional practices with Christianity or Islam, honoring both God and the ancestral spirits. Others maintain rituals quietly within family circles, while younger generations reinterpret the ancestral connection as cultural heritage. But whether through prayer, music, dreams, or simple remembrance, the emotional core of the belief remains intact. The ancestors are still called upon during weddings, funerals, new ventures, long journeys, and critical decisions. The form changes, but the essence survives. What makes this belief so enduring is its humanity. It speaks to universal questions: who am I? Where do I come from? Who watches over me when the night feels long? Ancestral belief answers these questions not with abstract doctrines but with the warmth of family bonds stretched across time. It assures people that they are part of something far older and far greater than themselves. That they walk paths carved by the footsteps of countless ancestors. That they carry within them the wisdom, courage, and spirit of those who came before. In the end, the story of ancestral belief is not just the story of African spirituality, it is the story of humanity's longing for connection. It reminds us that even in a world of constant change, the most powerful guides are often the ones who walked before us. And as long as people continue to look to the past for wisdom, comfort, and identity, the ancestors will remain present, whispering through dreams, echoing in rituals, and living on in the hearts of the living.